Okay, so combat in World War One, what was it like? So in 1917, World War One had already claimed millions of European lives. Now, Americans, however, believed their troops could bring the war to a quick end. Soldiers dug trenches as a means of protection from modern weapons, okay? In between these two trenches, you have what was called the no man's land, which was a space between the opposing trenches, okay? Soldiers would charge the enemy by scrambling out of the trenches. What's wrong with this idea here? This inefficient military move made soldiers easy targets, and so thus they would be killed very easily. So in major battles, both sides lost several 100,000 men at a time. To break through enemy lines and reduce casualties, new technologies were created. Poison gas was used for the first time by the Germans. This often caused vomiting, blindness, and suffocation. Tanks were unsuccessfully used. They just weren't very good in the wars yet. Airplanes came about and they were used to drop small bombs on the enemy engaged in air battles. Alright, so Americans in this were nicknamed the Doughboys, alright? So although they were inexperienced, the American soldiers boosted the morale of Allied forces. American Admiral William S. Sims, he proposed convoys at this time in which merchant ships and troop transports were gathered into groups and brought across the Atlantic by warships. Okay, the result was a reduction in shipping losses and ensured that American troops would get to Europe safely. Although Russians supported the war effort, their government was not equipped to handle this major problems of the nation. Okay, so as a result, in 1917, there was a revolution. Vladimir Lenin led the Bolshevik Party, overthrew the government, and replaced it with a communist government. All right, Lenin pulled Russia out of the war and agreed with Germany to sign the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, removing German armies from Russian lands in exchange for territory. And this closed the eastern front of the war for Germany. Okay, so they can put those troops into the west. Now, in March 1918, Germany launched a massive attack along the western front and pushed deeply in Allied lines. American troops, though, were able to capture the village of Cantigny, and with French assistance, the German attack of Paris was blocked. All right, so the American and French troops held their ground at this time. In September 1918, American General Pershing put together the most massive attack in American history, causing one German position after another to fall to the advancing American soldiers. And finally, on November 11th, 1918, Germany signs an armistice, or a ceasefire, that ends the war. And that's important because it's a ceasefire that ends the war. It's an armistice. It's not like Okay, with the end of the war, you have a flawed peace. In January 1919, leaders of the victorious Allied nations met to resolve the issues caused by the war. Now, the problem is, none of the defeated nations were invited. So Woodrow Wilson proposes a plan called the 14 Points that addressed the principle of justice to all people and nationalities. Now, the points proposed by Wilson included eliminating the general causes of the war through free trade and disarmament, open diplomacy instead of secret agreements, and the right to self-determination. The points required the evacuation of the Central Powers from all countries invaded during the war. And then the 14th point, known as the League of Nations, called for member nations to help preserve peace and prevent future wars. Now, the other Allied governments felt that Wilson's plan was too lenient toward Germany. Now, the Treaty of Versailles, which is what it became, signed by Germany, weakened Wilson's proposal. Now, the treaty stripped Germany of its armed forces and made it pay reparations, which are war damages to the Allies. The Treaty of Versailles and the League of Nations, they were opposed by many of the United States lawmakers. They didn't like it. Okay, so these people, the reservationists, led by Henry Cabot Lodge, supported they supported the League, but wanted to change the treaty with amendments that would preserve the nation's freedom to act independently. Wilson went around the country promoting this. Exhausted by trying to sell his plan to Americans, he suffers a stroke. In the end, the Senate refuses to ratify the treaty. Instead, the United States negotiated separate peace treaties with each of the individual Central Powers. That concludes this video on World War I and the end of the war, and you'll have one more video over this topic. And as always, look forward to a quiz. Thank you. Bye.